Over the last few days, day-to-day life has changed dramatically. If anyone told us this past Christmas, you're going to have to stay inside for a few weeks and things like church services would be canceled or gyms and restaurants and bars would be closed or you can't have more than 10 people gathered, we wouldn't have believed them. Some of you are familiar with the movie Back to the Future. Can you imagine Christmas time like Marty McFly showing up in your living room and saying listen to me, you got to get ready. Buy disinfectant or get a lot of hand soap on. He's up on buying toilet paper. Can you imagine if he showed up in our living room? We would be like, no, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. And yet, that's our reality. A lot of uncertainties, and it feels very disorienting. So I was asking myself the question, amidst all of these uncertainties, what kind of certainty do we have, especially through faith? The first is this: God is not surprised by it. God is not surprised by it. I do think we should be careful about attributing it to God. I'm not saying that. Yet, this is not a surprise to God. He's aware of everything that happens in our world, in our life, of things that will happen, things that have happened. He's aware of it all. Recently, I read an article by C.S. Lewis, and he was talking about a lot of the fear that was happening in the time of the atomic age. And he wrote this article, and this is what he wrote. He said, "We have to be careful of thinking that all of our challenges are unique to us and our time." And he went into this little litany of in London, there was a plague every year. God, don't let that be the case, right? And he gave the example of the Vikings and the barbarians where towns would be sacked and day-to-day life was upended on a regular basis throughout Europe. We have still many people who have experienced living, sometimes our grandparents or even great-grandparents, who experienced some aspects of war, including world wars or the Great Depression. You see, all of these things are not new issues, and frankly, we don't even have to go back into history to realize this. Even prior to this announcement about COVID-19, how many people had already things that had upended their life? Some people were struggling with various forms of sickness or maybe a cancer. How many people had already had job challenges prior to this time? Troubles in their marriage or their family or in relationships? How many people had lost loved ones? These are not small things that upended their life. You see, life in our world is always, always unpredictable. That's just the reality. It's always unpredictable. And sometimes we will have to face tough times and difficulties. So while the first certainty is God is not surprised by this, the second certainty follows. And that's this. You see, no matter whatever we experience and whatever uncertainty, that God made a promise, I will be with you. I will be with you. That was his promise to his disciples. He said, I will be with you always, even to the end of time. You see, as Catholics and Christians, we're not pessimistic or optimistic. Those aren't even categories that really are part of who we are. I read a great essay by Archbishop Chaput. He's the recently retired Archbishop of Philadelphia. And in his book, Strangers in a Strange World, he said, look, optimists say, hey, don't worry. Everything's just going to work out. Possibly, but not always. That's not reality. But pessimists, on the other hand, are things will never work out, or they're just always going to get worse. That's not true either. You see, we're not optimists or pessimists, but we're rooted in ultimately the virtue of hope. And what does hope mean? Hope reminds us that no matter what we experience, the Lord will be with us, and the Lord will walk with us no matter what we experience. Many of us are familiar with Psalm 23, the famous psalm about the Lord is my shepherd. There is nothing I shall want. And what's some of the heart of that psalm? It goes like this. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me. You are with me. And that's more than a certainty. It's a promise. You see, this is a great time to refocus our priorities on things that matter, right? God first, our family, others. That's basically living the two greatest commandments, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind and strength, and to love your neighbor, including in uncertain times. So let's talk briefly just about those three, right? How can we grow in our love of God during these times? You see, for many people, it could be easy to fall in the twofold rut that's going to happen, right? Probably what's going to happen, what's the next news? What's the next news? I'm watching the news and we can't get away from the news. That could be crushing and debilitating. On the other hand, because of this weight of just what's the next news and what's happening, we could just go into escapism. and kind of like, just kind of run. And some people escape by social media. Some people escape by TV or just watching a whole, a 9-week series on Netflix. Other people are escaping through alcohol or Oreo cookies. Hey, this is Lent. This is Lent. These can't be our priorities. God always still has priority and has the first priority during Lent. And that includes over things like Oreo cookies. It's time to reclaim the peace of God within our heart and with our homes. So we just have to be intentional about that. What does that look like in these new realities of spending some daily quiet time with the Lord? You can read the scriptures of the day. There's something beautiful about soaking and dwelling in the Word of God, of getting to know Jesus in a more personal way. There's always a living word for us when we spend time with the scriptures. Sometimes it's maybe a family rosary. Maybe it's something you've never done before. Look online with how to do it. Or pray with us. You see, Samson and Deacon Zach came back to the rectory, so beginning this week and especially over the next week and a half, we're going to have opportunities you can pray with us. We're going to have a Facebook Live daily Mass at 9 a.m., our normal time for Mass. At 3 o'clock, we're going to pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet. And join us at the end of the day for night prayer for about 7 minutes. That sense of praying the Liturgy of the Hours with us. Let our family, let's come together as a family. If we're more intentional with family prayer, there can be more peace in our hearts and peace in our homes. And is the world in need of prayer? It is. Is the church in need of prayer? It is. Are our families in need of prayer and all our worries and anxieties? We have a place to bring them ultimately before the Lord, who loves us and is with us and says to bring me, cast all your cares upon me, for he cares for us. Second, let's relook at how we commit to our family. Did you see that meme that was kind of going around? It said this. It said, just remember, we can all get through this together, just as long as we're not together. Please keep your distance 6 feet. And that reality of, let's spend time together as a family. What does that look like? Have you talked with your family about it? Maybe you should. I heard some great stories, some families that revived board game night, right? How beautiful that is, just spending time together as a family. Other people have time for conversations with their spouse, with their loved ones, maybe especially with teenagers and our young people and our children about their fears and anxieties, about the reality of faith and how we can get through this with God's help one day at a time with His grace. And finally, we can't forget about the others, especially our neighbors in need. Let's make sure we pay attention, especially in times of uncertainty. If we're called to grow in our love of God and others, pay attention. Who's the person in need? It's not just a homeless person on the street. While that's important, we all have loved ones who are in need in various ways, and maybe it is health issues or their isolation and staying in contact with them. Maybe it's picking up for groceries for someone who may not have the COVID-19 but needs food dropped off for them. Maybe we could do that. Can we help people who are struggling financially in some small ways or make a meal for them? These are beautiful and great ways. Can you imagine at a time of great uncertainty, love is widespread through you and me? And I'd say this, wouldn't it be ironic or beautiful? Maybe, just maybe, we'll discover, if we looked back at these times, that especially in these uncertain times, in times of great isolation, can you imagine how beautiful it would be if we looked back and said, in the time we were isolated from one another, it was a graced opportunity of a deeper connection with God, with our family, and with others, especially those in need. Wouldn't that be a grace of God through it all? That it was during that time of isolation that we truly learned what it means to be connected and united to one another. I'm Father Brian Nolan, your pastor. May God bless the families of St. Isaac Jogues. May God bless everybody. And look forward to praying with you in the coming days.